Okay, we are live. Welcome to my jam making class. And say hi to my mom. This is my mom, Marilyn. She's going to be my assistant. My mom made all my jam for me when I was running my bakery. So
thousands and thousands of jars.
She made thousands of jars of jam. And she tried to help when I first started out. She tried to help me like do it myself. And I had lots of little kids at the time, and being the awesome mom that she is, she just said, let me just do it for you. It'll be so much easier.
At my house.
Yeah, at her house without my kids there. So my mom is a jam making expert, and she's going to be my assistant, and she's also going to help me make sure I don't tell you the wrong stuff, because she's more experienced at jam making than I am. So we're going to make strawberry jam today, and I posted a list of the equipment that I'm using and ingredients. So I'll also go through those today during our class. But I just want to give you kind of an idea of what we're going to be doing. So the kind of jam we're making today is we're going to be making jam in a water bath. So you can do jam in a water bath, or you can do freezer jam. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But making jam in a water bath has lots of pros to it. This is going to make the jam sealed and preserved. It's going to preserve our jam, so that we can keep it like on the pantry shelf for a year. Yeah. So that's the kind of jam we're making today. So just to go over a few items of equipment that we have here. So we have this big pot here. This is a water bath canner. It's used for canning foods, and all of these items you can get at Walmart. You can get them other places, but there's like a food canning section at Walmart, and it has all this equipment here. So if this is something that you really want to get into, go ahead and invest in these things, because this process takes the right kind of equipment so it can be done properly. The pot comes with this, right, Mom? Yeah. It comes with this little rack, and this fits right into the pot. It's just the right size, and this is what our jars are gonna go on, and it's got these handles that we can lower and lift our jars.
You can also buy those separately.
Oh, you can buy these separately too? Okay, yeah, so if you need to buy it separately, you can. Then we also have our jars. Let me grab a box. So you can pick up a box. They usually come in a dozen. These are the 1/2 pint jars, and they're regular mouth. So regular mouth is going to be the width of the jar. Those are the kind that we are using. And we've also got this cool little thing. This helps us grab the hot jars off the rack. And we have a funnel. This is handy for filling the jars. It sits right on top of the jar, and we're gonna spoon our hot fruit into this. I have a ladle for spooning the fruit. And then this little cool thing is magnetic on the top. Right now I have my lids and sitting in some hot water, so I can just dip this in the water and pick up those lids without having to even touch it. And we have our strawberries are in the pot. They're all cooked up, and let me kind of take you over here and show you what we have going on here. Let's see. So we have our strawberries all chopped up. I'm making a single batch, and this is gonna make about 5 jars of jam. And I just blended my strawberries in my blender, and we like ours kind of chunky, so we just did it in like a chunky texture. And then we have our lids over here in some hot water. And then this is our awesome water bath we have going on over here. So we have this water over here. It's getting heated up. It's getting ready for us to put our jars into. Let me just talk a little bit about the recipe that we're going to be using. So we are using Pomona's Universal Pectin. And you got this at Walmart, right,
I
Mom?
bought it on Amazon.
You bought
You can get it at grocery stores.
At grocery stores. So yeah, you can get this at grocery stores. We got it up on Amazon. So there's also Sure Gel, I know is a really popular brand of pectin too. But we're gonna be using Pomona's, and the reason why we're using Pomona's is because it allows us to use less sugar when we're making our jam. Jam requires lots of sugar. So whenever we can reduce our sugar intake, I guess that's a good thing, but we're gonna try and be good. And that's why we're gonna be using this. And so this kind of pectin requires us to use calcium water. So the box is gonna come with an envelope of pectin, and it's gonna come with an envelope of calcium powder that you have to mix with water. And we're gonna go through that as we go through this process. But it also comes with a recipe, and it comes with instructions. So it has like all of these recipes on here. It has different hints, different troubleshooting things, and it has all the recipes for like all these different kinds of jams that you might want to make. Also, they have more on their website too, and that's a really helpful website. So we're going to be following the recipe for strawberry jam. We've made, well, I say we, but it's really my mom. My mom's made tons of different kinds of jam for me for my business. Mom, what's your favorite kind of jam that we've made, or that you've made for me?
I like the way you say we made.
That we thought out together, that you actually made
picked it up and handed it to a customer. I really like strawberry, but that apricot pineapple is really
Oh yeah, the apricot pineapple. That's like a favorite
and the
of my
spicy
customers.
pear is really good.
The cinnamon pear, yeah. And a lot of jams that she made for me came from their fruit trees. Like your pears, they had a pear tree and
Apricot.
an apricot. So if you have fruit trees, definitely use your fruit for jam. I think my favorite one that you made was blackberry basil.
Oh, that was good too.
Yeah, we do she does a blackberry basil jam. She does it with a basil infusion, and it's so good. I love basil. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Before you start, get everything laid out, measured out ahead of time so that you can make this process go really smoothly. You need to make sure that you have your jars, that you're using warm jars. We have ours in the dishwasher right now that are being heated in the dishwasher. I know some people like to keep their jars in there. You can keep your jars in the water bath, right, Mom?
Yeah, or just hot water.
Or just hot water. But you never want to fill your jars when your jars are cold, because we're pouring hot fruit into our jars. And if you pour hot fruit into a cold jar, it's going to cause the jar to shatter. So we don't want to do that. So we have everything measured out. We've already chopped up our strawberries. I have my sugar.
Did you put
I've got, no, I didn't put the pectin in yet.
Maybe you're gonna come to that.
Is this the pectin?
Yes.
This is the pectin.
See,
Okay.
It says pectin on it,
It does?
doesn't it?
No.
That's
The
That's the
pectin.
pectin.
Okay, that's the pectin. Okay, so we've got our strawberries on the stovetop. And make sure you use a tall pan, because we're gonna bring our strawberries to a boil, and you don't want that hot fruit splattering on you. So to our fruit, we are going to add, oh, did I write it down? The calcium water. Thank you, Mom. The calcium water is gonna go into the fruit. And where's our recipe? I didn't write it down.
I think it's 2 teaspoons.
2 teaspoons, I
For
think
this
you're right.
much.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to double these recipes.
Oh yeah, it's really easy to double. And if you're gonna go through all of this effort,
You want to double.
Yeah, double your recipe. Make it worth your time.
Or you can have it too.
You
It's
could.
very versatile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you could. So, okay, two teaspoons of calcium water. That's gonna go into the fruit.
Before you heat it.
Yeah, before you heat it up. And my mom's gonna stir it
And
together. And then we're gonna put a half a teaspoon of butter in here too. And that kind of helps prevent it from foaming up too much. You'll see why in a little bit after we're done cooking our strawberries. So we're gonna stir those strawberries and bring them to a boil. And once they are boiling, we're gonna add our sugar and pectin.
Is this on?
So yes, that one's on. So you can turn that. Yep, turn it up. It's really hot, so be careful. So while Mom is stirring that up, we're gonna mix the sugar up with the pectin. And so I have 4 cups of mashed strawberries in here. That's 4 cups after it's mashed. So 4 cups of mashed strawberries is actually like 8 cups of just whole berries. So it'll decrease by half. So 4 cups of strawberries, we did 2 teaspoons of calcium water into the fruit. And then I have 2 cups of sugar here. And I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of pectin to my sugar. And it's important to get that mixed together really well. Because if you don't, why, Mom?
And you just have pectin in, that's not mixed up with the sugar, like a glob of it. And when you put it in the hot fruit, it's gonna gel into a big globby gel.
Yeah,
So it has to be mixed up really good.
yeah, mix up your pectin really good with your sugar. And again, if you're using a different kind of pectin, if you're just joining us, we're using Pomona's pectin. Sure Gel Pectin has a different process for this. It's not like totally crazy different. It's just a few different steps. So just follow the directions on your pectin recipe. So we have that all nice and mixed together.
And this is starting
And
to boil.
we're gonna show you what this fruit's looking like here. So boil it. It needs to come to a boil a rolling boil, which means like even when you're stirring it, it's still bubbling. And at that point, then we're gonna be adding the sugar and pectin to it. We are making we're making strawberry jam today. So
Okay.
that just needs to come to a
It's
rolling
starting
boil.
to boil, yeah.
So is that ready, Mom? Is
Not
it ready?
quite yet.
Okay. It's almost there. As soon as it's a rolling boil means
It's
boiling
when you're stirring it.
boiling while you're stirring it.
So you can't stir it down.
So we have in here, we have our chopped strawberries, we have our calcium water, and just a little bit of butter.
Okay, you can put the sugar in now.
Okay, so it's time to put the sugar in. It's at a rolling boil. This is the sugar and the pectin.
Dump it in all at once
Yeah.
and stir.
Then what are we gonna do, Mom?
it has to come back to a boil. When it comes back to another rolling boil, then you take it off the heat.
Okay.
And you want to make sure the sugar is dissolved and that there's no lumps of sugar, because sometimes it will clump together.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of feel with the spoon, no clumps.
All right.
So you keep on stirring constantly. You don't want to just walk away from it.
Yeah. And then we were reading the recipe, and it was saying, like, the recipe says after it comes to a rolling boil, you stir it for another 1 to 2 minutes.
That's with Sure Gel.
That's with Sure Gel. Okay.
Isn't that what it says?
No, I think you stir it for another.
It says it takes 1 to 2
1 to 2
minutes
minutes
to bring it back to
a
a
boil.
rolling boil.
And then don't boil it for too long, because it could boil like all the pectin out, which would
Right.
cause it to not thicken up when you can it.
Whereas if you're using Sure Gel, I think you have to bring it to a boil after you add the sugar and boil it for, I think, a couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It wants you to, so that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But with pomonas, it just wants you to bring it to a boil, and then you're ready to put it in the jars.
Okay.
So sometimes I have walked away, like if I was multitasking, walked away from it, and it will pop. It will
Yeah.
pop fruit, and you don't want that to happen, because sometimes it pops on you.
Yeah.
It's pretty hot.
It hurts.
Yeah, or it'll pop out of your counter
Onto your ceiling?
Yes. Yeah, do you still have that on your ceiling?
We wiped it off after a few years. That was another thing that happened when the one time my mom tried to help me do jam at my house, was it popped onto my kitchen ceiling. I had jam on my ceiling for a while.
And Randy came home and said, "What's that up there?" Okay, and now it's starting to boil again. So I think that's a good rolling boil, don't you? Doesn't that look like one?
Yeah, I think that looks good.
So you can turn off the heat
So we'll turn the heat off.
and get the jars.
Okay, we'll get the jars all ready.
Yeah.
Let me flip this back around. So now we're at the point where we can get our jars ready to fill. And I'm gonna grab those. And they're gonna be hot too when I grab
This didn't foam up very much, so
Yeah, 'cause we put the
butter
in it.
yes. But if there is foam on it, a lot of foam, you want to spoon that off. There is a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Before you put it into the
And
jars.
remember, we
which
need-
you don't want to add foam.
You need pop-outs.
Yeah.
This really is helpful when you're doing it with somebody else, I think.
Yeah.
So, get a friend to help you. Here's a bowl if you want to scrape or you can rest the spoon right here and then put the foam in there. Or is there any foam?
Just a little bit.
So after you're done boiling it, you might have some foam on the top of your jam, and you just kind of skim that off with a spoon, and just see how she's just skimming the top off and spooning that out. Because we don't want
Yeah, there was hardly any.
we don't want any foam in there.
The butter really helps.
Yeah, if you put a little bit of butter in there, that'll help it from foaming up. So if you're just joining, I have my jars here. They're all warm, so we can't add hot jam to a cold jar, or it will shatter. So what we need to do now is fill our jars, right? Okay, so we're gonna fill our jars, and do you need that little ladle? Do you want to use this? Okay. Or however you want to do it. And when you're filling your jars, fill it to just 1/4 of an inch from the top of the jar. And that's really important, because if you don't fill it to that level, it's not gonna seal, right, Mom?
You don't want too much space between the jam and the top of the jar.
So that one's good?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm gonna take that off. And then you can fill that one. Okay.
This is boiling. This water's boiling. This is, the little funnel thing is really handy because it has kind of a break in it, so you know how much to add without having to look at the jar.
Yeah, it has like a level. If you look on the inside, it shows you exactly what level you need to fill it to.
This is gonna be good jam.
This is gonna be good jam.
Those bits of strawberry.
I know, I like the chunky.
Okay, I think we get one more.
So we're doing a single batch on the recipe from the pectin box, and we did a batch yesterday. It gave us like 5 jars. And if you ever end up with not a full jar, you can just put it in a jar not full and put it in the refrigerator, and it will set. It won't seal, but it'll set. You can still use it, but let it cool before you put it in the refrigerator.
Okay, there's the lids. So.
Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to wipe off the rim of the jar. And Mom likes to use, this is called a handy wipe, right?
Yeah, they
Okay.
really work.
So you can just buy these. These are just kitchen rags you can buy in the store. She swears by these. These are the perfect rag to cloth. It's not a rag, it's a cloth, to clean off the lids or the rim of the jar. So we want to really be careful when we're doing this part, because if you don't properly clean the rim of your jar, it's not going to seal. It's not going to seal right.
And check for, like, if there's a nick in the top on the rim, it won't seal.
Sorry, let's turn this down. Yeah, if you can reuse your jars. You can reuse your jars and you can reuse your rings, but you can't reuse the lids. So be careful when you're reusing jars to make sure there's no nicks or cracks in your jars, because that's not gonna allow you to get a seal on your jar. So do you want to do the lids, Mom?
Okay.
And then we need our rings. Should we have our rings handy? Yeah. So you just clean off the edge. And we did
I have to go around the rim twice just to make sure.
Go around the rim twice just to make sure. We did a little test batch yesterday, and I think I didn't do it properly on a couple of them, because a couple of them didn't seal. So Mom's just putting the lid on there right after it gets wiped off, and then screwing that ring around it. See why this comes in handy when you have a helper. It's like a little assembly line. It really is helpful. How'd you do this all by yourself?
I'm super organized.
You are super organized. You're a lot more organized than I am.
Plus Dad would come in and help occasionally.
Oh yeah. So we're just cleaning the edge of that jar so we can get a nice good seal. And it's best to just put the lids right on after you wipe it, right, Mom? Because you don't want to risk getting the edge dirty again. She's so fast. Okay.
We got 5 jars?
We got 5 jars, yeah. Okay, so now we're ready to put these on our rack here. That's gonna go inside of our boiling water. It's gonna go inside our water bath.
And, you know, it doesn't have to be boiling, the water. When you put the jars in, it could be warm and you could just bring it to a boil. But this water is already boiling.
Yeah.
Be careful.
So we're just gonna lower it into the water. And, oh, those fell down.
Oh, well.
So when you lower it into the water, you need to have the water level above the jars.
At least an inch above the jars.
At least an inch above the jars. And once the water comes to a boil, then you set your timer for 10 minutes. If you're at a higher altitude, you add 1 minute for every 1,000 feet you are, right, Mom? So we're in Arizona, so we don't have that problem. So that's gonna cook for 10 minutes. Sorry. And that's what's gonna seal our jars. And even when you have the jars cooking in there, you might start to hear some popping. And that's just that sealing process happening. Sometimes they happen in the pot. Sometimes they happen right after you get them out. But when you hear that pop, that's a good noise because you know that your jars are sealing shut. So we're gonna give that a few minutes and let that cook. Let me know if you have any questions about what we're doing. So we're gonna go over a little bit of troubleshooting and talk a little bit about freezer jam too. So what we're doing, if you're just joining us, is we're doing a water bath. The water bath, you could do either make jam through a water bath or freezer jam. So freezer jam has basically the same ingredients, it's just a bit of a different process. So for example, if you're using this Pomona's pectin, which we like to use because we can use less sugar. If you were doing freezer jam, you would add the sugar to the fruit and stir that, and then you would boil water, and in a blender you would add the pectin and blend that with the boiled water, and then you would add that to the fruit, and then you would add the calcium water and mix that. So it's a little bit of a different process than what we did. Someone's asking, what was the ratio of strawberries to sugar? So we are using 4 cups of mashed strawberries and 2 cups of sugar. And if you're using sugar gel, I think you have to use 5 cups of sugar.
Yeah, at least. I think it was like a half a cup of sugar per jar.
Yeah, I think it was almost a cup of sugar per jar.
It was lots of sugar.
Yeah, it was, yeah, so that's why we like to use this pectin, because you can use less sugar. But they do say in the recipe that after you've added the sugar to the fruit, you can taste it and test it to see if it's sweet enough. If you have fruit that's not very sweet, you might have to add more. But the strawberries I'm using are really sweet, so we're just only using 2 cups of sugar. So freezer jam versus canned jam. So if, let's talk about some of the pros for doing canned jam. So canned jam is using a water bath. The canned jam sets up better. I feel like it sets up a lot better, and freezer jam can be a little bit runnier, more like a sauce than a jam. It has a smoother consistency, so because we're cooking it, because we are putting it in the water bath, it's going to break down the sugar, so it's going to make it a little less granular than freezer jam. It has a smoother consistency. You can store it on the shelf instead of storing it in the freezer, which, if you're like me, your freezer space is really precious. and I can't afford to have jars of jam in my freezer. So I love to have them on the pantry shelf, especially like if my kids need to grab a jar of jam, then it's visible to them, they can see it, it's visible to me, so I know it's there. And you can keep it on your pantry shelf for up to 12 months and it'll stay good, unopened. Once you open it, you need to refrigerate it, and you can keep it in your refrigerator, I think, for just a few weeks. And I like to use canned jam because it's an awesome gift to give. Like, I love to give away a loaf of bread and a jar of jam to someone. I think that's one of the best gifts you can give somebody. I love to give that as like teacher gifts for end of the school year gifts, or even like Christmas gifts, or just to a friend that needs like something nice. So that's why I love to have canned jam. Someone's asking where I purchased my pectin. So the Pomona's pectin I know is offered in some grocery stores. We got ours on Amazon. It's on there, so you can find it on there. So some of the cons about canned jam. Well, you have to have all this equipment, which if you are gonna be committed to doing your own jam, I think it's an investment. And this isn't limited to jam. Like, you can also can vegetables or like whole pieces of fruit to preserve and keep on your pantry shelf for later. You can use it for chicken, right, Mom? You can can.
Probably.
You can can.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like meats and stuff. So
I think that you have to use a pressure canner for that. Yeah.
For meats. Okay, but you can do all kinds of fruits and vegetables in the water bath. But so that's a con. It's a few extra steps, and it does make it a little bit darker in color. But you just kind of have to outweigh the pros and cons and decide what you want to do. Freezer jam pros: it's easier to make. It retains its bright color of the fruit, so it's more like eating fresh fruit, and you can put it in a freezer safe container. Some of the cons of freezer jam, I think I already talked about. It takes up freezer space. It's a thinner consistency, so if you want it just for like maybe waffles or toppings on ice cream, then freezer jam would probably be a good option for you. And then I also talked about how freezer jam can sometimes be a little bit gritty because that sugar and pectin doesn't get fully dissolved because we're not cooking it. So what if they don't seal? So I said yesterday we did a run through and we had a few jars that didn't seal. So what you can do is you can take that fruit out, and you can try to reseal it.
Mm-hmm.
Reseal it in another batch.
Yeah, you just want to check the jar to make sure it doesn't have any
Yeah.
mix in it.
So for instance, this was one that didn't turn out, and I noticed that we reused an old ring. If you can see, this ring has a dent in it, so we're kind of thinking that maybe that's the reason why. But check your jars and make sure there's no nicks around the rim of your jar, because that's going to prevent it from sealing. Make sure that when you put your lid on, that it's nice and centered over the rim of the jar, and you don't have to screw this ring on super tight when you're canning, but get it on tight enough to where it's going to keep your lid in place and it's going to keep it from shifting when you're sealing it.
Yeah, if you have to reseal it, make sure you put on a new lid.
Yeah, and make sure you use new lids, because you can reuse your jar, you can reuse your rim, as long as, maybe we're not going to reuse this one because it's dented, but as long as it's in good shape you can reuse your rim, but you cannot reuse these lids. And you can buy these separately in the store. You can buy just lids. So there's that. those are probably the most common things that you might run into if your jar doesn't seal. So I heard our jam is almost ready to take out, and we're gonna set it on a towel here on the counter. We're gonna just lift those jars out and set them here on our counter. So we have, I'm gonna shut that off. Remember, we have our handy dandy rack inside our pot here. Sometimes the handles fall down, which they did this time. Usually they'll fall down like if you don't have a full batch of jam on your rack. I'm just gonna lift those handles up so I can grab them. And then it just lifts out of that pot, and really carefully just transfer it over to your towel. And then you can use this cool thing. It's shaped so it can just grab your jars like that. And there's gonna be a little bit of water on top, so I just kind of will tip that over and shake off any water. And at this point you might start to hear some popping. I think I heard a couple of pops while they were cooking. Oh, don't do that.
I've done that so many times. It's okay. It's all right.
It's still good. So we've got our jars here, and they're...
So you have to let them cool for 24 hours at least before you decide whether it's a success or not. because it's still pretty runny now. But as it cools, it will thicken.
Yep. And have you ever had them take an hour or so to seal, to hear that pop?
Sometimes, 6 hours before one will pop.
Oh, really, that long?
Yeah, but they usually pop right away, and you can tell if it's sealed because that little bubble right there on the lid, it should be in.
Yeah. So
none of these have popped yet.
But these, I can see, these are close. These are still kind of pointed out. So a way to test your jars to see if they're sealed is you just press down in the center, and if it's
see?
Yeah, if
it's sealed.
It's sealed. You just sealed it, Mom.
I just sealed it. Yeah, if it doesn't pop back up, it's sealed.
Yeah. So just give them, like Mom said, 24 hours to make sure that they get nice and sealed, and then you don't ever want to put it in your refrigerator when it's hot, right?
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, because you don't ever want to mix hot and cold with glass. Is never a good idea. Oh, did you hear that? It popped.
That one?
Yep. I heard
that one
pop. I think so. No.
Oh, maybe, I don't know. What was that pop?
Maybe it was this one just continuing to pop. I heard a pop. So that is how we make our jam. Oh, come here. My mom is the best jam maker, so I think we should make some more jams here during the summer. Maybe we can we'll do our apricot pineapple and strawberry basil for sure.
Strawberry basil or
blackberry
basil?
Blackberry basil. We'll do triple berry. That's a yummy one.
That's really good. What's the berries?
Strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries. That's how we do it. That's how my mom does my triple berry jam. My mom is a jamming expert. So
jam. Yeah. I love to jam.
She does.
I'm jamming out.
Mom, thanks for joining me.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, this is where I get all of my baking knowledge from. Is this lady right here.
You're a lot smarter than me.
So if you have any questions, leave questions in the comments. I'm going to save this to my IGTV, and I'll help you answer any questions that you need. I'll ask my mom if I don't know the answer.
Plus, if you go to the website,
Yeah.
you can troubleshoot on that. Or
Yes.
the pectin, that Pomona's and Sure Gel both have very detailed instructions.
Yes, the pectin, yeah, both Pomona and Sure Gel have these awesome guides for making jam. They have several different recipes, and they have really good websites for troubleshooting and all that kind of stuff. So get out there, make some jam, make some homemade bread, give somebody a great gift, do something nice for yourself or your family. Homemade jam and homemade bread is just about the best thing that I think you can eat. So thanks for joining me. Let me know if you have any questions.
You did good.